have a roll call.
Counselor Baxter,
Present.
Counselor Bosman's, Counselor Buell,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef,
Here.
and Mayor Dongsworthy.
Present, thank you. So, I'm going to start as I have with every city council meeting and study session. This is like presenting a land acknowledgement. This is my land acknowledgement. It's not reflect individual or a council as a whole. For thousands of years, this region was home to numerous people, bands, tribes, nations. Each had their distinct culture, artistic expression, and community mores. In particular, this region was the ancestral home of Lutu, Dene, Pueblo, Hopi, multiple Apache bands, various other tribes, and Latinx people who used and stewarded this land. I recognize that indigenous peoples were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands by the U.S. government. It is important to recognize that the narrative of this region has been mostly told without perspective, without recognition of those who came before us and who to this day continue to thrive, create, and connect with this land. Thank you for your respect and my acknowledging this legacy. Thank you. Today, we will start with just want to go over the agenda. That it is, we'll start with future new business. Then we'll have a Durango Mesa Park discussion. If time allows, we'll have a 10-minute break. And then we'll go over the discussion regarding the Durango trails and utilities with it. And we are set to return at 5 p.m. today, not right. And for the record, we can now acknowledge that Councilor Bosman said it's interesting that we started today. So I also want to acknowledge what we're going to talk about next study session and make sure people we agree with that. It's been on the agenda for some time, but we'll have again future new business. We'll have a discussion regarding monthly financial reports. 17 meetings. We'll discuss the Youth Pass Water Association, their government put a topic of discussion with the IAB for some time. And we've allowed, I want to make sure the council feels that that's sufficient. We've allowed 60 minutes for discussion of the water. So, and that has us ending at 4:55. But any recommended changes or on the allocation of time for that.
So just want to think through that lodger's tax script. I think it's going to be a big discussion. So we're on that. We'll be discussing with the council. If we're going to be providing direction to staff to bring this to ballot.
Is there a presentation that Devin's gonna have?
Yes,
Okay, on the different things that
On
we've
the different
discussed
things.
and talked about wanting information on.
Would anyone consider changing the order so that the lodger's tax might sort of, so that if we need more time?
Okay, well, how important is it about our monthly financial reports and the water association? Are those important topics
I
or?
think they are, but I think they're kind of the same version.
Okay, so if they're not urgent, then yeah, we can switch them.
We could keep them. We could move this lodger's tax up. We could move those back. And if one had to be bumped, potentially, otherwise we keep it on.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, too. But just so I get it through my head, so for this meeting, we haven't had a big picture discussion yet. This is just lodger's tax discussion.
yes, ma'am.
And then do you see us having them to go into city council and actually take a vote, but not on the 7th? It would be in February.
Probably so. We just have to look at the formal process of what are all the steps going, dependent upon what's the conversation or direction given at the study session.
Is there, I see you 2 support, I supported. Any other thoughts on changing the order of that?
It's anything, I would like to try and keep the study sessions to stop at 4:30. Is that, because a lot of times it seems the study sessions keep getting longer and longer.
Well, actually, we agreed that they would go from 4:45 when we agreed to actually meet to combine them. So that was the original agreement, 4:45. This is us, but we can always not have a break and shoot to get out at 4:45.
I think the biggest issue is we keep on bringing up new agenda items that we want on agendas. And we have to try to squeeze them in or have additional meetings. And I would rather go till 15 minutes later, 5, and get these things that we want to discuss and push forward in, then have additional meetings.
And I think that robust discussions and thorough
Yeah.
discussions and thoughtful discussions
Yes.
are more important than. I don't think we should cut ourselves off from having good conversation and learning just because we. want to get done.
Well, it cuts a little bit in my opportunity, because I like to leave at 4:45 at the latest. Is
One of the challenges of being a city councilor, sometimes meetings don't always go the way we expect.
But I think maybe if we, in the past, 4:45 departure really hasn't worked, right?
Yeah.
So I think we should just try to be cognizant of that and try to run efficient and effective meetings to the best of our ability. I know today we're going till 5, correct? So, just so you know,
Yeah, no, and that's why I bring it up, because it seems to me that further out, and
yeah.
I don't want to miss the regular meeting.
When I think that the reason that originally Melissa and I brought these meetings together, the study session and the council meeting, was because that was happening a lot, where the study session and the council meetings were separate Tuesdays and they were going hours later. Like, and it was excessive. And so we brought them together to minimize that and just pretty much be like, okay, from 2:15 till all night long, we're doing council, but that way we won't have to have every Tuesday. And that was our original, when we brought it up, thoughts. So.
And then the other option is that we could reduce but I would only suggest that every council committed to sending to council what they plan to bring up under new business. And the rationale for that, we could look at reducing the 30 minutes at the start of our meeting, something like 20. So there's things that we could do, but I think it would require a commitment on the part of all council, which we've already asked for that.
We could also start earlier. And that would solve that problem.
I would suggest that in the past, new business has never been 30 minutes. I mean, I think, or sometimes when I have been on earlier years on council, because new business is supposed to not be a real big discussion about the topic.
Yeah.
We bring it up. If there's support to have future discussions, it should be happening in the future. And so it should be relatively quick. Well, you have a tendency to kind of go back and forth in those. So we might be able to expedite that if we run that more effectively.
Okay, so I think the city manager has heard some suggestions. What I'd like to say is we did commit to going at least from 2:15 to 4:45. We recognize that sometimes they have to go over if council needs to leave or family meetings, whatever, that's.
I'm guessing that because I mentioned we could also start early and nobody.
I would rather stay till 5 than start early. 2:15 is about as early as I want to be here.
Rather not start early.
I'm just a
Yeah.
solution.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
Maybe
Okay.
another topic on that. Same, the last time, I think we had a presentation from Luke with Ma, and the agenda item was pretty late. And we finished early, and we had to wait for 20 minutes or so. And maybe we can tighten the schedule and then have extra time at the end. Does that
I
make
think the
sense?
issue
So we don't
is-
have to wait for
You'll
people not
recall-
being there
you'll
because the
recall on
agenda.
that one, anyone, even on today, there might be people in the community who want to listen to a particular discussion, and when we put it down at an estimated time, we have to be pretty close to avoiding that time.
And I'd rather sit here for a few minutes than request our community members to sit here and then wait for us. I'd rather wait for our community members.
Okay,
Personally.
so what I'd like to suggest is, city manager has heard this, we will, summary of it next week, we will start with the lodger's tax, we recognize the other two items are important. But may not have the same, ultimate deadline for the decision. We will start with 1:15, and was if necessary, we can do a break, and shoot to get out at 4:45. So, now, does anyone have items under new business for upcoming? I have one, no one else has anything.
Just checking mine, so it's so long. I have one too.
Please go ahead.
I wanted to see if there is council support to just have all of us get a really good understanding of what are the services being offered at Nana right now. And before instructing staff to go find it out, I'm really curious because they're in I don't remember if it was an article or if it was a discussion or a public comment, someone mentioned that there was a warming center at Nana from 7:30 to 11:30. I'm not aware of that. I wasn't aware of that. I would love to know if that's really happening. I just don't really know what the services are. I understand now that they don't really have a kitchen like they used to. They're more coordination of care. So I just wanted to see if there's council support, if we could get an update on what's being offered for our homeless population there. I'm just curious.
I think it makes sense to hear.
Just to know what's going on. Not,
Maybe
you know,
update or something.
yeah, is that okay? I mean, no rush, but I didn't want to.
We could do it as an operational update, if that works.
You
Which
bet.
thinks it should be probably about 10 minutes.
Yeah, no,
10.
it doesn't have to be anything
Okay.
extensive. Like I said, I would love to know, are they doing a health warming shelter? If they are, like, what are the hours? Is it every day? Is it on the weekends? Is there a place for people to go, you know, and maybe how many people have been attending, if they are doing it, or what are they offer, you know, do they offer, what meals are they offering? Is it just lunch? Is it just takeout? I'm not familiar. I used to be, but I think they've changed. And so I'd be interested in just understanding that more fully as we head into winter.
So operational update, January 17th, work for
Yep.
council.
That sounds good. Okay.
One of the things I had was, I think I sent this out to council that I would be raising it. It's from a gentleman, James May, who is really working with the mayor to have, to see if the city of Durango would support the rebuilding of New Mexico Highway 173 from Aztec. It doesn't require, it's not asking for any money or anything like that, it's asking for a letter of support or a resolution that they could then use with their government in seeking funding. I also wanted to see if the city manager had any money with that.
No, you touched it pretty well, Mayor. He came into my office and has this road that's in New Mexico that he was wanting a letter of support for, understanding that it would be no funding requirements, nothing in that matter, but just as a importance of a regional connectivity with us being so close together. It is a odd request, just because it's in another state. We don't really have control over it, but one that was brought up by him.
So I need to get a sense of what would council like, would they like to hear from him? He's got a draft resolution or more questions.
I mean, I'm all for supporting our community partners and, you know, connectivity and stuff. It requires no funding and I don't necessarily need much.
I'm trying to figure out what we lose.
Well, I don't know what the reason is for needing to go. Like, I don't know what the condition of the road is. I don't know what the challenges
Yeah.
are, and so I'm not really knowing that I'm supporting any of the changes. Or and it's not that I'm against it. I just don't know what that looks like.
Yeah, one of his rationale in this letter is that many of your folks from the area travel this road to their commuting, recreational and business trips. And if you have had the occasion to drive it, you will know that it is a desperate there. I mean, I'm not a civil engineer, so I don't know the whole out there, but some of the people who come from Southwest Colorado, boats, RVs to the lake. I think he believes it would increase business traffic in the whole area.
He's wanting a letter of support.
He's wanting a letter of support order, yes, a letter of support that he can say, take to their government, their legislature and say, city of Durango sees it as viable or important.
What's our improved practice around letters of support? We get these now and then. How are we usually running these?
Letters of
The
support
process.
usually are those that are, I believe, last we left it up is if the council's in support, those that are in support sign a letter of support for it. I think he's asking for a resolution.
Yeah.
So it's an official document that's usually
Okay.
approved to it, but if the council decided that a letter of support was more appropriate, that would be something that could be
Do
done
you
as
have
well.
any thoughts on a resolution versus a letter of support?
A resolution is more of an official action from the council. A letter of support is just a support letter. In this part, not understanding kind of how the New Mexico government works in that state. I think just anything from support would be fine. So if it's a letter of support, that makes it easier. I think that would be something that we could just offer as a
I
portion.
would support a letter of support.
I would too.
Me too.
As would I.
I think the question was if we want to hear more about it during a future study session or.
Or no, I've sent this in advance to people and given notice that it would be a discussion, and some getting direction on. It doesn't necessarily have to have another discussion. It could also be, can you answer this question of a letter of support? Let's put this out some time ago, and I sent it to council.
Yeah.
Well, no, we wouldn't write the letter of support staff, obviously.
Right, so we'd have to see
And
it.
that's, so we'd have to see that, and in the meantime, the idea of like, so what is really going to happen here? Maybe a lot of times when people ask me for a letter of support, what I say is you write it for me because I'm gonna know what you want me to say, and then I'll see if I can agree to that. Because I don't know enough about this to be able to write a letter of support.
Right. And we would then see it. Yeah. And that council would have the choice. You could do individual sign on or all of it. Or which way. So there's support to prepare that and bring it back to council.
But isn't that discussing now a topic?
Well, what we're trying to do in new business is decide if it should be a future agenda item for a resolution. But what we're hearing the majority of councilors saying, we're not saying it should be necessarily a future agenda item. We're saying, no, we'd like to see a letter that we would just sign.
Okay, and then we can
That's what we're
decide.
Yes,
Yeah, it's good.
And one thing I was gonna ask as mayor is I would like to ask all of council to please make an effort to be on time for our meetings. I think particularly if there's a discussion about wanting to leave on time, that people need to be here on time to start. It's a repeated pattern of some councilors, and I think it's certain that respect is shown to all of us to start on. So I'd like to make that request going forward. Anything else? And again, I would really ask, for the sake of efficiency, that council sends their information in advance to all of council, so we don't have to spend time discussing as much. And finally, I do want to acknowledge that the rural philanthropy days we will have on the agenda for January 17th for a discussion of possible funding from that. We probably might have it on this agenda, but it's not the year, so we'll have it on the site.
that sounds great.
Perfect, and thank you, Kim, for the follow-up questions and taking that directly. I felt as though your conversation might spur new questions on, so I wanted to do that. All right, we are a few minutes ahead of schedule, and again, keeping in mind that if we were efficient, perhaps we could shave 10 minutes off of the business going forward. Hurry, we're going to. I see others here. Did you guys want to join us at the table? Come up by Maura and others.
I'd like to invite Maura Compton and Gage Sippy to come up to the table. I'm going to try and share the screen.
Thank you.
How are you? Good, thank you.
So can I just ask you to state your names, Mr. Microphone, so if anybody's ready?
Gage, you want me to start now?
Yes, please.
Gage Sippy.
Sorry, Maura Compton. Oh, thank you.
I do think you guys may have trouble being heard.
Will you,
Yeah, just speak a little louder.
Oh, right.
Sure,
Okay.
since you're a little.
and Tom, let us know.
I'll go ahead and kick us off. Terry Nycom, Parks and Recreation Director. Here today to give you an update and talk about the Durango Mesa Park project. Kind of review what we've been working on in 2022 and where we're headed in 2023. And as you know, Gage Sippy, he's a board member for the foundation. Invited him to help with this presentation, and of course, Maura Compton, the executive director for the foundation. Really quickly, just to recognize a few other folks who could help us answer questions if we get into that discussion level. Vicki Vandergrift from the planning department's been helping quite a bit. We have Mike McVaugh with HDR, who's helping quite a bit. And then, of course, we have Allison and Justin also here, I saw, who've been working with us on roads and utilities and things like that. And Denny Elkins. So well, we're here to really kind of give you an update. Like I said, Really, we have been working quite a bit, although I will say it's been not as lightning fast as we'd like, but we have been making progress in 2022. And I think we're set up for 2023 to make some pretty good steps forward. So we're really excited to share this with you today. We have a slight, really quick presentation, and then we'll open it up for discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Maura, who's going to give us a little background on the project.
Okay, great. Thanks, Terry. So we want to, first of all, we want to say Happy New Year. Way to start off the year, right? What I wanted to do is the last time we were here was in 2020, February of 2020.
Wow.
And that, yeah, that's the last time. And that was an update on our organization and where we were at the time. And then just a minor little thing happened right after that. So what I wanted to do is do like a quick update just to bring everyone up to speed. So this property was purchased in 2015 by Mark Katz with a vision of giving it back to the community and housing community assets there, cultural assets, music assets, athletic assets, so that it really could become an economic driver for the entire region, really. The county master plan was completed in 2017. The county spent $245,000 on that plan. And in 2018, the city area plan was completed and adopted in August of 2018. The Lord Foundation provided a planning grant for that for $100,000. And so with those two items, those were significant items. They had very robust public processes attached to them. Heard a lot from the county residents, from the city residents, but they came with a price tag of about $150 million for combined. That obviously would be higher today. And so 2019 and into 2020, there was significant effort with the foundation, with city and county to come up with a phase one plan in the range of about $18 million. That included some of the critical infrastructure, it included some of the amenities. And into 2020, into 21, obviously with the COVID issue, what was really being worked on was really honing in on what those costs would be and what the amenities would be. And myself and Gage actually also spent that time visiting some other communities that had built bike parks specific, because we felt that this was an item that could go up fairly easily without a lot of, doesn't require buildings, for an example. And during those visits, we really looked at what their successes were and also what their mistakes were or their failures. And so taking that information, we moved into 2021. And during that period, after Jose took over manager position, we were able to successfully complete the purchase of the Horse Gulch open space. That had been a goal of the city for, I'll just put it at decades. And that was a $1.5 million purchase. And then those funds were specifically directed to start infrastructure. There was also a traffic impact study completed. We worked very closely with city and county on that process and also received an access permit. Then towards the end of 21, we were working on what the planning process was. And so city, county, with HDR and the foundation, we were looking at the county PUD process. At the end of 21, that was determined that that was not going to be a sufficient planning tool to move forward. And so annexation discussions began at that point. So we worked into 2022. We formally hired HDR and Mike Dubois. And one of the, I think one of the really positive things that came out of 22 was setting up regular scheduled meetings with city staff and other department heads, and with county and with HDR and the foundation to really move really critical conversations forward. The foundation completed a vision and discovery process with the bike park contractor. That bike park contractor's name is Progressive Trail Design. And the city was involved all through that process. I would like to highlight one major thing that Vicky and I and Kevin Hall at the time, we have been working for 4 years on gaining the approval with our neighbor for the emergency access road. And that was completed last year, the last week of last year. So I just want to take a moment and really thank Vicky for our persistence and really working together through that process. The reason that piece is so critical is if we didn't have that, we really couldn't be having this discussion that we're having today. So thank you. And as well, working through emergency access design. So the other thing that I just want to highlight, I know that with new councils, when you work on projects that has been going on for, I'm not going to say how many years, but several years. There were also many events that have taken place on the Mesa since 2015. We had 5 years of Meltdown on the Mesa. That was a music event that took place up there. We had 3 years, Gage and I worked at securing the Colorado High School Mountain Bike State Championships. We had those for 3 years. And we also had economic impact reports that came out of 2 of those events. And then with the change in downtown, the decision to move up Iron Horse Bicycle Classic events onto the Mesa took place in 2021, 2022, and will most likely continue into the future. And then there were other smaller events. So that's my quick recap on where we are.
Thank you.
We can move to, great. So the team, the Durango Mesa Park, we have a 5-member board of directors. We also have Denny Ellers, who has been working with us with legal since the beginning. As well, city staff, we've worked very closely with Jose, and then as Turi moved into his position, we've worked extensively with Vicky, previously also with Kevin Hall, and then also Allison Baker. One thing that I just want to acknowledge is that there has been a very hard and heavy lift on a lot of these items over the past several years, and I want to thank staff and the department heads for getting us to this point, and also for their commitment moving into the future. So thank you very much. HDR moving into as one of our agents into position last year has been extremely helpful in moving through, especially a lot of the civil discussions. We have up to this date hired HDR, who's working with us on a number of these items. Progressive Trail Designs, who will also be working on with the master plan, which Gage will discuss, with USA BMX, and PST Engineering, and then SEH as well. You can go to the next slide. There we go. So I've mentioned Mike McBaugh, and I'll pass it over to him. I just want to point out that his name may be familiar. He was our regional director for CDOT, and then left that position and started up with HDR. It's a nationally recognized organization with a local presence. And we really felt that Mike was an incredible asset, not only for this project, but for our area. So pass it over to you.
Thank you. So we're just handing around a quick pass out, and this is just kind of highlighting what HDR is on the western slope of Colorado. HDR is an employee-owned company, but it's a very large company. We have about 11,000 employees worldwide now, and we are a worldwide company. In Colorado alone, we have over 500 employees in Colorado, and part of my job is building out the western slope. And you can just see on the front cover, there's already quite a smattering of new employees that we brought in just in the last 2 years. I happened to leave CDOT right when 2020 hit.
And so it's been quite a change and adjustment to do that. But what HDR brings to the table is, I'm a transportation guy and I will always be a transportation guy. But in this project, I have Amira Shahid. She's a landscape architect. She's out of our architectural group. So we have transportation, we have infrastructure, utilities, water, sewer, gas specialists. And then we also have our landscape and architecture group that can bring the vertical construction side and that bigger visioning that someone like me, an engineer that, you give me a road and I'll do a road. Well, somebody will look at the context of that road and go, this is a better way to make it fit and meet what the community really needs. And so that's why we've paired both Amira and myself together for this project. This is a once in a lifetime project. This is something that is really, really special where this can change communities in a good way. And it's not just bringing a bunch of new development into something, it's an opportunity to really enhance a community. And so we see that as HR, that's something that we like to do. That's something we really want to make happen and help communities to be better and find ways to be better. So that's kind of a big piece of that. Really high level for HDR, just giving that to you, but any questions? Okay. So the other thing that you don't see on this, we've hired one more person in Durango. And so we have another engineer on board and we're talking about a third now.
I guess I'm gonna one question.
Mhm.
What is your contract with, how long can we expect to be working with you?
Ideally, the intent of this contract with Durango Mesa Park, because we're directly contracting with them, is to help support and be the client manager for all assets that are required to get this project to completion. So that's the plan. So as long as those services are needed, this is a contract that can continue on. We've done what we call a master services agreement, where we have this agreement. It can be terminated at most any time by either party if it's necessary, with proper notice, of course. But it can also keep going on as long as it's necessary. The way we work a project like this, just because you have a master services agreement in place, there's no money tied to it initially. And what we do is we establish task orders. And so a task order, we develop a scope of work and a fee for that scope of work. We negotiate that with the client. And then if they're comfortable with that final scope and fee, then they can sign it and give us what we call as a notice to proceed. So in this case, through some of the next steps that we're looking at, we have a task order 2 and a task order 3. Task order 1 was just to come on board and help get the program rolling and get into that bi-monthly or bi-weekly meeting process, et cetera. Task order 2 is going to start investigating what's it going to take to bring the infrastructure up to the park to meet not only the initial needs of the park, but the long-term needs, looking at that bigger annexation plan that we're working towards. Task order 3 is the actual annexation process to get that completed. So those are the only items standing out there right now.
And I'll just interject and let you all know that HDR was hired by the Durango Mesa Park Foundation. We're working to establish a short-term funding agreement where we can participate and help the foundation through this, pay for some of these processes. The city is going to be responsible for a third of those things that are being done by HDR, as well as Progressive Trail Design, but we have a little bit different funding agreement there, but city will take care of a third. The foundation right now is taking care of 2/3 of the costs of that process. The reason it's 1/3, 2/3 is we're still trying to figure out and understand where the county is going to fit into this project.
So I do have a question on that, so if it's for HDR or elsewhere. Who is involved with looking at the contested wildlife?
We have, Maura and I have engaged Colorado Parks and Wildlife. We started talking to them. And we intend to, bring them along through this whole process too.
Yeah, because I didn't hear the mention of them, and so I figured, I don't want them to be in the back door.
And when
rather
we-
than, I didn't know the liaison to that.
And when we get a little bit further into the presentation, we're going to talk about some demonstration trails that we're working on. We have hired SME to go out and do some environmental analysis for us for those trail alignments. So we'll be doing that kind of work throughout this process.
And Maura, it was almost a year ago that I sat down with both CPW and BLM because they're neighbors to this, and to make sure that we're keeping them engaged, keeping them aware. And at this point, they seem pretty supportive of the overall plan and what we're looking towards. But they also know there's a lot more to be done before we get to that endpoint.
And I just was curious if there would be any, not only the parks and wildlife, but you also think about any kind of impact on birds, rookeries, and things like that.
Correct.
That you-
That's included, yes.
I hear from the wildlife photography community and otherwise. And it makes it very interesting. Thank you.
Great, we can go. Yeah,
Am I up?
you're up.
Okay, so speaking of bike parks, so as we looked at what could be built up on the mesa with lesser infrastructure than other amenities. And the bike park has been something that our community has talked about for many, many years, but location has always been a challenge. It's not every day you end up with 1,800 acres all at once kind of arrive in your lap. And we had that happen. And so in the spirit of taking advantage of that, we want to build a best-in-class bike park for state of Colorado, and I think hopefully nationwide. So part of the process that Maura mentioned is, you know, we went out and did some homework, but if you go back to that planning process that took place back in 2017, 2018, I remember going to those meetings. The community kind of came together and put their wish list of what they would like to have, not only for the bike park, but for a lot of different things up on the mesa. We have taken the bike park specific stuff and carried that forward. So, and we have gone out and we have spoken to companies that are building large bike park facilities, not only in the United States, but across North America. And we landed on Progressive Trail Designs, who's based out of Bentonville, Arkansas. They were one of the first companies in Bentonville to be in the bike trail building business and then bike park business. And but we did do homework. We went there, we spent time. It's the great thing about Bentonville, it's a little bit like a learning lab. At any given day, there's 10 bike trail companies working. The Waltons are spending a lot of money on infrastructure around that. We have decided on Progressive Trail Designs. They have the biggest breadth. They have the ability to do large scale planning. They have civil engineers, landscape architects, those types of things. And they bring us one other really key ingredient. They have helped set up operational agreements and get maintenance programs set up as part of this. And so we will be bringing, they have already done some work with us last year, but we start on the actual master planning process for the bike park next week. So we will have USA BMX joining us because as part of the bike park, we want to have the BMX facility up on the mesa. So we have brought in USA BMX, will be a part of this process with Progressive Trail Designs. And we will take all those things we talked about back in 2018 that our community wanted, we'll bring those forward, and then we will start placing those on the map, if you will, and start the design work around what is the bike park master plan and BMX master plan going to look like. We hope to have that process done in June. But keep in mind, this isn't, it's funny for me to say this all sounds bike. It is very bike centric, but there will be additional trails in and around the area that we use for hiking. We're looking at Frisbee golf, dog park, all those types of things. And so it says bike park, but it's more community based than it sounds from that standpoint. So the other piece of Progressive Trail Designs is we have worked with them on identifying some connectivity from Horse Gulch up onto Durango Mesa. We've identified what Turi just mentioned, which are the demonstration trails. We worked with Durango Trails on this as well. And so what we'll be working on in the spring is a demonstration trail project that does two things, gives us a couple new and different trails going into next year, but it also sets up the connectivity between Horse Gulch and Durango Mesa Park proper for the long term. And again, we'll start on that and hopefully in the April timeframe, provided all the environmental stuff and those types of things get taken care of. So we're going to have a fairly long process with Progressive Trail Designs, USA BMX. But we have done a bunch of strategic planning and upfront work with them a year ago now. And now we're taking that information and taking it to paper and starting to build out what we're going to have in the bike park. The other thing we're keeping a very close eye on is how can we utilize this new facility to offload some of the pressure on the trailheads around town, right? So on any given day, it gets busy in Durango on Devo days, on things of that nature. This will allow us a facility that has parking, that ultimately has bathrooms, that parents can drop off their kids, lots of different amenities, and we can hold special events there. As a guy that's done special events and larger ones, it's getting harder and harder to do them downtown or in places like that because it's especially cycling events. we're building with that end in mind, that we can have large events up there for the long haul, building out the facility, not only increasing the size of it, but allowing the BMX facility to have a better opportunity to do larger events as well, running events, those types of things. So all of that will be encompassed in our master planning process.
I'll just interject again here and let you know that city staff, and I brought in, and Gage has been very supportive of this, Jordan Root, who runs our BMX program. He's been helping us with some of the operational planning, and we hope to get in a lot more involved and a lot more deeper understanding of what that operational plan is going to be in the coming months as we go through this master planning process. So we've been trying to get a better understanding of what that's going to look like in the future. And just to reiterate, yeah, we have started the environmental processes and then assessments on those demonstration trails. So we hope to actually get our first draft report next week before Progressive Trail Designs comes out.
Any questions on my piece of that?
For the bike park master plan, will you, so you'll be working on that in 2023?
We'll be finishing it.
Finishing.
Absolutely.
Will city council have any role in that?
We will certainly want to touch base with you, and as we get towards the end of it, and give you the opportunity to review it and understand what we're planning to do. Yes.
So the opportunity to review prior to approval,
Yes.
to provide input.
Yes.
So there was quite a bit of input from what I understand several years ago, and we're just taking a lot of that information and moving that forward.
Okay. But we will see it and stuff.
Yeah, we will definitely provide that touch point.
Great.
And just to, because I looked at that picture, and I was like, we are talking soft surface, not reader desk.
Oh, there will be some hard surface components to it because they last longer, to be quite honest with you. So things such as chip seal are being used regularly now on certain types of flow trails within the bike park itself, not on the natural surfaces. And we absolutely are going to have a paved pump track up there. And so you may not know what the pump track is, but we are going to have one because our community needs one.
So again, I always raise this, right, looking at it, working with the sustainability director to find some of the, what are the offsets, what are we contributing to the environment through use of, by not using soft surfaces, what is it impact the drainage, and what is the environmental impact of that, not just the animals, but.
Sure, absolutely.
Engage one more person. Sorry. No. So the Durango Mesa Park Foundation will ultimately approve the master plan.
Yes, but we are I'm going to say almost in complete lockstep with Turi and his group on every step of the way. And with the hopes that the end result is we have a product that we all were part of. Absolutely. Yes. And as we go into the operational management and programming of the facility, everyone's in agreement on what we did.
We totally appreciate that. The only reason why I asked is we have had plans in the past that haven't been approved by all, like the county council, for example, and haven't been approved by everybody. So I don't know. I'm curious, but I appreciate your attempt to bring it all in and collaborate and consolidate.
Yes. I'm not promising perfect, but I would certainly say that we are making every effort to be as cohesive as possible with the end users, which city in many ways becomes the end user from that facility as it becomes a city amenity to some extent. So we want to make sure that we're very clear on what we're providing the community and what it's going to take to operate it, manage it, all of that type of stuff going forward.
Well, and I also ask, it's important because we're focusing on that in 2023 while we are simultaneously working towards focusing on annexing to the city, then it's something that we inherit.
Exactly.
And so that's the questions.
Yep. And that's why we have made every effort to do this in lockstep with the Parks and Recreation Department up from that standpoint.
Excuse me, Asia, I'm sorry. I just want to say, will you actually be delivering an asset management plan that will say, with this facility, this one, all that, you will need X amount of money by 5 years out to replace this? Will that be a deliverable?
Yes.
Before construction?
And we've already started on that effort already. And so one of the things in going to these other communities and baselining with them on how they're doing, because there's other public-private efforts like this going on. They're going on all over, to be quite honest with you. This is a rapidly growing industry. We are looking at how we can begin with the end in mind from the standpoint of the minute it's done, it needs maintenance. The minute it's done, it needs operational capacity. And so we are starting with that. As soon as we're thinking about what the first jump line is going to be, we're also talking about how are we going to maintain that from day one and run it and fund it.
Thank you, and just, I want to thank you for
Of course, yes. First, it's super exciting and the fact that you're in talks with USA BMX, because my son BMX races. And when I was at Tulsa, USA BMX.
All men,
headquarters,
all men.
Unreal, first of all.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
He's coming here next week, the CEO who built that.
So he like cornered me. And so I
Yes.
know you-
Shane Fernandez.
Yeah. I'm like, but anytime we travel anywhere, my kids are wanting to go to Walmart and.
Yes.
Evolution and Trust, like all these places, and they're packed with people, like it is so fun, and the energy of tourists and locals, like I don't do this myself personally, but I watch my children do it, so I'm thrilled and super excited. Also, we have the USA BMX State Championships here 2 years in a row, 2 years, like this past year, it rained so hard, and it was such a mess. Because you can't be a Mexican Marine Brigade, effectively, anyways, sorry. So, the fact that we're looking at a new facility, when it's growing so crazy here, and Jordan is to obviously thank them, all the work that the city has done, but like super appreciative, super excited. But what funding do you need for the master plan like this year, or any additional funding are you gonna be requesting? And then going forward in a few years, we're gonna be talking about re-upping our 2005 sales tax soon, we're gonna be talking about, there's lots of discussions coming up with funding options and stuff, and so I think it's good for me to have it in my head as to what funding looks like going forward for this project, and then, you know, what also needs for.
I'll just jump in
Yeah.
and kind of answer that. We
Thank
have,
you.
It's a great segue, by the way.
Right.
I'm gonna have the discussion now for 30 minutes, so I just want to keep us.
so really quickly, funding, we had $1.65 million in the budget last year, CIP. We have $1 million this year. We have only spent $230 so far.
This year?
Yeah, last
3
total,
days.
total.
Oh.
And that was to start the environmental assessment. So we'll be rolling forward, reappropriating funds from 22 to 23.
Okay, great.
And then we have an additional about $2 million in 24. So we have some funding from our 2015 tax that's going to help with this phase one process. As far as what we're doing right now, we're entering into a short-term agreement to finish up or get us to a point where we can make some more solid decisions on the costs of certain aspects like the road and bringing that down to a grade that is acceptable, how we're going to get utilities up, and then also the design of the bike park and the BMX is all included in this first short-term funding agreement. Once we get through some of that process, and we'll have the next step where we'll probably create another agreement for the next step. So we're kind of taking it step by step, but right now we have the funding in place to be able to do this. Yeah, great.
But we can always use more.
So, question for you. When we did the $1.5 million purchase for the area to connect us together, one of the points in that was e-bike access. And in Durango Mesa Park, if I understand this correctly, will allow for e-bike usage. And will these demonstration trails also allow?
All the demonstration trails are not in conservation easements, so we can allow that.
But are they also on that piece of property that we bought from the DMPF?
Yes, there are some that are on that piece of property,
Right.
and some that will go all the way down into the meadow and the horse pits.
So those would, if I remember the agreement correctly, those would absolutely be accessible because of the agreement.
That's correct.
Yes.
Language was put
The other thing that's really challenging about Durango, and I know you all know this, but we're not very novice friendly for bikes, nor are we very people who have challenges, whether they be physical challenges or what have you. So ADAs might not be the right word to use, but that type of situation where people who maybe don't have respiratory capacity is 7,000 feet, they do it 100 feet, but not 7,000 feet, those kind of things. The Mesa seems to me to be perfect to have some of that kind of access so that there is a place for people to go who can ride like that or hike like that. For example, so is that gonna be?
Absolutely, and so green trails, we'll call them green, meaning green in ability level, will be on the master plan. But also adaptive sports, we've been working with adaptive sports to understand how that facility can serve their needs as well. The great thing about the size of the mesa, there's a lot of canvas to work with up there from that standpoint. So we feel we can fit those things in, but it is absolutely, we have a lot of hard trails here. There's no arguing that, and it's high elevation. So we one benefit is you can park at the elevation you're going to ride.
Exactly, that's what I was gonna say.
That
Getting
makes a
there
big,
is one of the
yes,
biggest problems,
yes. So that will help that situation.
We have 2 more slides that we should try and get through
Yeah.
pretty quickly. Do you want to talk about emergency access real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I broached the subject at the beginning, that finally has been completed. That's been a multi-year process. HDR is prepared to submit, that at the end of January. Yep. And then construction bids go out, and our goal is for that, construction to be finished in 23.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm glad you guys think so also, because this has just been, I'm so happy.
For everything else, but
Yes.
It is the thing that mattered the most. So our goals is emergency access construction, completed bike park master plan. Gage mentioned that the goal in that is the middle of 23. And then with the help of HDR and with city staff, working through roadway and utility cost updates, and then the annexation piece. We kind of consider those 2 separate pieces. And then starting to work into the construction of the demonstration trails. Those are lofty goals, but we feel like the amount of effort and hard work that was put in 21 and 22 will get us there.
I just want to, since the presentation, really thank you all. I think you mentioned that it's a once in a lifetime project. It seems you're doing everything, checking every mark, and very excited about seeing this over the next 10 years or however long you guys have planned for it. And how it all ties in. I think it's really exciting. Yeah, it's fantastic. To what degree do we need to anticipate changes on the city part, like Highway 3 to your access roads? Because at a certain point, draw a line where your project is, or your project is. Where does that tie?
Okay, so Highway 3 still belongs to CDOT, despite my biggest efforts. So we're still gonna have to do we have an active access permit with CDOT to make improvements at the intersection of Highway 3. So as we go into task order 2, which is figuring out the main road alignment and the grade is the biggest concern right now. That will also tie into developing the conceptual design plans for the intersection. So we will continue to work on that, build that design out. And that may be something that you'll see probably the improvements for that would probably be in 24. Ideally, at the same time, we're fixing the road. And if we're going to tear the road up and change the grade on the road, why not do the intersection at the same time and create that disturbance once? That would be the ideal situation.
And then from the highway to the river trail issue, are we anticipating those upgrades?
We've been talking about that and trying to figure out the best way to make that connection, and whether we go alongside the road as we do get to grade and put in a trail alongside the road to get down to Highway 3. Or we've also been kind of kicking around the tires on whether we should make that connection through Horse Gulch. I think we need to have some more conversations with Durango Trails, with the community on what works best. But the main goal is to, try and figure out that way to get down to the Amos River Trails.
But would that be also potentially, if you do the work on the intersection, would that be a tunnel? Just so you don't have.
It's been discussed.
Right now, it's hard to say. One of the things to go under the road there, you're coming out onto a very steep slope. So that may not be the best solution. It may be trying to do something parallel to Highway 3 And then working with CDOT, hey, if you're going to do an intersection upgrade and improve that signal, let's do it the right way to make sure we can get the ADA accommodations put in there for crossings. CDOT does have plans long-term to improve that intersection. They were going to do it a few years ago, but they ran out of budget.
I think it's very valuable to have great early heads up from multimodal so that they can approve projects or start planning ahead, which comes fast and then it's an expensive as a city.
So I'm gonna jump in and thank you. Exciting. It's a long time coming, it's still ways coming. So thank you for continuing to partner with the city. I know we had some issues there in the middle a while ago, but I think we all managed to work through them. It's great progress. So I appreciate it very much.
Could I just say one thing, close to thank you again, all of you for being here, and your efforts on this, it's very, very exciting. Can we get more frequent updates, please? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I would love to see, as this is a big project in our community, if we could do it at least something, a couple times a year. Great.
As Gage said, we hope to have gone through the master planning process maybe as early as June.
Right.
So maybe we could have an update
After that or before
or
that, okay,
just before that.
that would be great.
Thank you for your.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Council, what I'd like to ask is that it's a 5-minute break. Back at 3:15 o'clock. That's right. Back at 3:14. 3:12, 5-minute break.
See the dirty ones? Oh, so you go to the one. And then go down to.
Yeah.
Trust the document.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Good to say that. Saturday.
It's on schedule. All right. Next, we have Durango Trails.
Colin took our presenter, Mary Monroe, so.
Well, that's not good.
They're trying to get something.
yeah.
Okay, let's say we can get something loaded. I just recognize the archive schedule, so on this printed schedule. All right, then we commence conversing to you is set up. Or read your emails.
Also need to speak clearly and loudly in an email. Mostly so they can hear us.
Who's that?
Them back there.
The back of the room.
Hi, back there, Lisa.
The staff.
Mary, bring as many people up as you want. All right.
He says,
Yeah.
okay.
He says no.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself into the microphone. Okay. I'll recognize your voice.
Okay. Do you want the presentation up?
That would be good. Take your time.
We're getting there. We're almost there.
Go to,
While Tom's bringing that up, I'll just, you did. so
Sorry,
much.
sorry.
I'll sit next to you, Terry. Terry Nyken, Parks and Recreation Director, wanted to, well, we have Durango Trails here, Mary Monroe, who's going to give a presentation on some activities that were completed in 2022 and what we're looking for in 2023. I'll kind of say that with the caveat that we still need to sit down and work through our 2023 work plan, but we plan to do that pretty soon. And then Mary, did you have anyone you wanted to introduce?
Yep, Daryl Kreis on our board. Travis Brown is here. Seth, are you here just as an observer? Okay. That's it, thank you.
So I'll give this to you, Mary. If
Okay.
you want to use the roller, it'll take you to the next screen.
Great.
And then, she's cursor from somewhere. Just get going for your video. I see the right there by the T for trails. It's your cursor. You're gonna need to click on that when the video starts.
Okay,
Or if not, I'll be right there.
will you? Okay, great, thank you.
So,
All right,
so thank you for having us today. Durango Trails is one of our closest partners. They help us tremendously maintain and develop new trails throughout our system. So very happy that they're able to come and share with you some of what they've been doing this last year. So I'll turn it over to Mary.
okay, thanks, Terry. Thank you for having us here today. We really appreciate it. I just want to start out before I review the agenda and just to give you a little bio in terms of my background in the outdoor recreation industry. As Daryl knows, a lot of times we bring in consultants from outside of the community, not maybe understanding the amount of expertise that already lives here. Daryl is president of a engineering firm and as a surveyor, and really he was the first person to help lay out trails in Durango. And I just want to recognize the expertise that lives here. Travis, as you know, is my husband, but in addition, he has a very long standing history in the bike industry. He's an Olympian. He does research and development for Trek Bicycles, the largest bike company in the world, does that here in Durango. And my background is I spent most of my career at Trek Bicycles. I created their sports marketing department and developed non-endemic partnerships, many of which still stand as today, the longest running partnerships in the history of the bike industry. And then I started my own business, but I also was chief marketing officer at the US Olympic Committee, and worked with many nonprofits, writing their strategic plans and helping really get their marketing going. And so I started with Durango Trails when the former director, Bill Manning, left and went to the Colorado Trail Foundation. And we've seen significant growth in that time. We've always partnered with the city of Durango, so we really appreciate that. We've only recently received funding from the city. So during our history of 32 years as a nonprofit organization, we've really been self-funded and helped subsidize the trail network in Durango. Daryl worked with the original owners of Durango Mesa Park and when it was Ewing Mesa, and he secured the trail easements on Telegraph, Sendit, Kreitz. And so I just want you to understand the long history of our organizational partnership and the people involved in the partnership, just so you're aware of that. So today we're going to cover our mission, our project planning process and work plan, stewardship, education, the economic impact, trails for everyone, and any questions. That's supposed to be happening, Tom. Okay. So, you know, we say trails are the gateway to the outdoors because really no matter what you're doing in the outdoors, if you're fly fishing, if you're skiing, if you're fat biking, you're taking a trail to that experience. So trails are very important to getting people in the outdoors. And what we saw during COVID is the true understanding of trails as a complete impact to our physical, mental, and social well-being. And that really evolved people's understanding and appreciation for the trail network, especially here in Durango. So our mission as a 501c3 nonprofit is to plan, build, and maintain trails, create connections, and to educate trail users. And we do that in many different ways, many in partnerships with the city or Visit Durango or other nonprofits as well. And we are recognized as a model trails program because we're multi-use trail organization. And so whatever the land manager says the trails are used for is the direction we have to plan, build, and maintain the trails. Durango has an exceptional trail, share the trails etiquette. Most people, when they're out on the trails, say hi. Most people understand that who's ever out there using it, we're all multi-use. So you might be hiking one day, or you might be biking one day, or whatever that might be. And we're all temporarily abled. So today, what you might be able to do, to your point, you might not be able to do it in 10 years. And so thinking through how trails are planned, built, and maintained from that perspective of being inclusive is something organizationally we have long thought through and is part of our strategic plan. This is an infographic about how a trail becomes a trail. So, you know, talking through ideas and planning is the biggest part of getting the trail built. Once we put the Pulaski in the ground, that's the last part of, but that's the first part the public sees. What happens behind the scenes is it takes many years to get a trail built. And we work with all of our federal land managers, including the city. And so we're really understanding of that process. This is the project flow chart. So there's the phase one of really exploring, of really getting out there and understanding what can be done. And then phase two is the design and engineering. And phase three is, as I mentioned, is the actual build part. And so that's the internal project flow of how things happen organizationally and within the community. And so our business model is to raise funds to hire crew leaders who manage volunteers. So that's what we do. And so we appreciate the city contribution to that. And then we hire trained and certified crew leaders. They're trained on many levels as crew leaders, as sawyers with the Forest Service, and then they manage volunteer support. And it's a very effective model and one that is emulated by other nonprofits across the country. Our crew leaders are vital to our success, and they're just, we feel very lucky to retain them. Especially during COVID, we worked very hard to keep them employed because we really couldn't have volunteers out for about 2 years. And so the crew leaders were doing all of the work. And we were able to pay them a living wage and a salary. They're seasonal, but our season has expanded from what it used to be. We now work pretty much from March 15th to November 30th. Partly due to climate change, partly due to the availability of crew leaders and to what we're able to do on the ground, given frozen ground and light and, you know, the barriers that we may encounter. There we go. Okay. Okay, volunteers, we recruit and manage over 800 volunteers each season. It's a very conservative number, and that really can be upwards of 1,000 volunteers depending on the projects that we're working on. We host about 50 public volunteer events. They're usually all open to the public, but we also do team building with corporations in towns, with schools, various types of other outreach programs. And we find there are many layers of benefits. One is the stewardship element. So when you have members of the community that come out and work on the trails and begin to understand the work behind it, they have a different ownership and then a different behavior on the trails. So instead of feeling entitled of, why didn't you build this trail for me, even though I never showed up, they instead are like, oh, I'm involved in here in this, and I contributed to this, and my voice was heard. So these volunteer days are very, very beneficial and have many layers of success and support that we've seen. We also are launching, you can't see the top line there, but we're launching a volunteer program this year and hiring someone to specifically work on the volunteer experience. So we'll be enhancing the volunteer program next year. And that will work more on recruitment, what that experience is like, really evolving this whole volunteer experience because it's so important to our organizational success and to the community. And then I'm going to just quickly go into the work plan. So the way that we work with the city is we co-develop a work plan. So we'll bring our ideas to Turi and to Amy, and they'll bring us ideas. So they'll say, you know, we're interested in doing this, this, and this. What do you think of that? And we'll say the same thing. And then we co-develop this work plan. So some of the highlights of the work plan, you know, all of the city's open space are here. But more extreme trails and easier trails are what we're missing. And so we spent the last couple of years trying to fill in those holes. And one was Three Springs, who very much was interested in accessible trails. We call them introductory trails rather than beginner trails, because someone's not necessarily a beginner just if they can't ride at 8,000 or 9,000 feet or run at that. It's really, like you said, it's about the terrain and the ability to access it.
Actually, we give credit to Councilor Baxter for raising that.
Yes.
I often raise issues with ADA.
Yes, right,
I have
yeah.
other views.
Yeah, and I prefer to use the word accessible because ADA has so many limitations, whereas accessible, you can really make trails available to more people and not be encumbered by some of the federal guidelines. And we did work with some accessible like hand bikers who did go out and test the trails for us, which has been really great feedback. In Horse Gulch, our major project this year was something called the Half Ridge. The trail name used to be called Baby Head. And it was an old fire trail that was put in over 20 years ago, and it was never reclaimed. So it was sitting in Horse Gulch. It was completely unsustainable. It was very rarely used. And so the city is going through a project of working with a private landowner. In that discussion, there was a request to move some of the trails in that area. And so we were able to co-develop a plan. What we thought